Dungeon crawlers, a subgenre of role-playing games that focus on, well, dungeon crawling, often having only one fixed location filled with treasures, traps and monsters. Admittedly, I don't have that much experience from these games, only like 2 first levels from Dungeon Master, and today's 2018 indie outing that, while failing its Kickstarter campaign 3 years earlier, got lucky during Steam's Greenlight program when that was still a thing. I have a specific reason why I chose this among from its peers that I'll tell soon, but let's venture forward to infinite adventures.
The game is designed and written by Travon Santier, who before this apparently worked on League of Legends in the early 10s, but I couldn't confirm what his exact job title was, and is accompanied with additional writing and sound design by Justin Hellstrom, who is outside of video games maybe known from podcast series The Great Chameleon War. The marketing says that the game takes its primary inspiration from Etrian Odyssey series that I, as I mentioned, haven't played, but I suppose more informed viewers may already have some idea what kind of game this is. We start with the mysterious guide and narrator figure only known as the Astral Maiden, played by Elsie Lovelock, who leads us to character creation, where I created Dorathal Schwarzbruin, a noble hobgoblin Ronin. It has surprisingly many options for variation from races to jobs that are sometimes limited by your race choice, and even social class with different houses if you choose to be of noble birth.
I feel strong.
Oh, yeah. That stoic male voice back does sound familiar, doesn't it?
Indeed, I was involved in this project as a voice actor. Just as a disclaimer, I'm not sponsored by the developers or the publishers in any way, and besides, I don't believe in such a concept as conflict of interest. Because I think a proper critic should be able to look at the works by their friends and themselves with proper detachment. Besides, the voice pack isn't the only thing that I did for this project, as I also voiced 2 characters.
One of them is the vampire lord Agamon the Prideful, that you can get during character creation as a summon depending on your answers to a series of morality questions. For this playthrough I don't have any material of his lines, but in case you're wondering how was my performance, well, picture how a vampire with my accent would sound like, and the first thing popping up in your head is probably it. But enough of self-indulgence, let's start our tale in the depths of Infinite Labyrinth, the ever-changing complex of, well, labyrinths, that for eons has lured folks of all sorts from the world of Trinity to seek for honor and glory, and 5 years ago a new entrance into it emerged. First we have a short prologue/tutorial where 2 adventurers from the local noble house of Giamata and their disposable bodyguards run into the dragon Jormungandr the Dreadwing, played by Brandon McCarthy, who foretells about the coming of his dark master Indra, the ancient of chaos hell-bent on world domination. After the dragon wipes the floor with them, the player character, who was found unconscious from the entrance by the Giamata Patriarch Lord Lucius, played by Cody Nichols, wakes up from his 5 years of coma with no memories. And like all amnesiacs heroes seen in prophetic visions, everyone expects Dorathal to solve all the world's problems. No pressure.
Admittedly, the start of the plot isn't anything fresh, but there is a decent amount of twists and turns to make the journey not too predictable. Much of the choices that you make during characters' backgrounds have small effects in how the story progresses. And while most of the time the main character doesn't say anything, there are occasionally choices that matter trademark, at least temporarily.
The city of Giamata serves as the hub for the main hero and all their party members that can either be created in the local adventuring guild or that you'll find during your travels, though the latter ones get available surprisingly late. There you can do all the shopping and trading, but also from the local tavern get side missions, where the forthcoming lore sharing and the political intrigue in the background showcase this game's exceptionally good world building. You may argue that a game fixed in only one location in its vast world doesn't need all that fluff, but personally I'm all for that stuff. The more details I have to form a believable scenario in my mind, the better. And there's a lot of it, as the labyrinth contains 6 distinct lands, and each of them have been divided to 4 floors or stations, with all these lands having their own plot integral mid and main bosses. That's right, Jormander is merely the first main boss in the chopping line, but tougher beings are in the way, like the devout Yndra cult leader Sorcerer Modari that I happen to voice.
Deep in her heart, she betrayed what she held most dear. What sins lie deep within your heart that you are prepared to betray?
The heart of chaos will illuminate them for me!
I probably should have asked who was supposed to do the sound editing. The voice acting in this game has been a point of contest, its feedback ranging from competent to somewhat maybe good to utter embarrassment. Speaking for myself, I guess Agamon's Transylvania went a bit overboard and Modari is perhaps a tad too grovelly, but I don't think that my performances, or anyone else's for that matter, were anything insulting. There are legitimately solid ones for characters that have more nuance / screen time for them, like for example Modari's second in command Jacinda Brightflame, played by Sarah Segura, whose development with her fluctuation between good and evil is interesting to follow. My absolute favorite from the cast roster is Adjutant General Silmyra, played by Marisa Lenti, who has a no-nonsense attitude, yet has crumbs of compassion and sense of justice under that harsh outer layer.
Not bad. This was much more interesting than the other attempts to end my life over the last few years.
I swear, if there was a hack and slash spin-off with her as the main character, I would play that so hard.
The art style is another contesting point, and I do agree with the criticism that the character models should have more facial expressions during conversations to make them less static, or have some sort of facial pictures in the dialogue box. However, the models themselves are competent work, and they are nicely detailed, even if there are few cases where costumes are over-designed. I mean, what am I looking at here? Was he ambushed by a pile of furs during a lingerie show? Anyway, graphics in general are adequate. The dancers are in 3D that is muted in details but isn't too hard for the eyes. And color usage is in balance. Same with the audio side, where the music serves its purpose in providing not particularly distinct but still quaint fantasy mood setters.
But hey, we have a whole heaps of gameplay stuff to go through, so let's talk about the Grand Labyrinth complex, where all levels are procedurally generated. This comes down to personal taste. I more prefer environments that have been handcrafted by the developers from the start. But I understand that randomizing is much less time-consuming to build. And to the game's credit, it does a good job at hiding its seams.
The basic features for a labyrinth include treasure chests and monsters that come either as random encounters or visible encounter points, some of them having tougher than normal mini-bosses. The game does offer a large amount of difficulty adjustments, ranging from how often the random encounters manifest to how often you can save during stations, so you can make your crawling experience as relaxing or as stressful as you want. Then there are teleports and secret doors to make traveling much less of a chore, traps to keep players on their toes, and puzzle rooms that are solely about moving blocks. There are no enemy encounters during these rooms, so at least you are allowed to solve them in peace, but the randomness makes their difficulty curve inconsistent, as you can still come across to flabbergastedly easy ones during the latter half, but to the game's credit, the more challenging ones were satisfying to solve. That indeed covers all the algorithm's building blocks, and when you repeat this formula 24 times plus optional bonus levels, it can start to feel tedious. Sure, all ends after specific environmental obstacles, but when you get down to it, they're just cosmetic variations of one another.
It took me over 70 hours to finish this game, and it does overstay its welcome. Granted, most of the time I played under the impression that there's only 5 lands, so the existence of the 6th one came out of left field, but still, I'd got at least one stage from each land. Granted, many of the Japanese role-playing game franchises suffer from the same problem of not knowing when to stop.
There are of course battles to vary the monotony, and there is a decent amount of skill variation for your adventurers. The battle tactics, at least for regular opponents, don't differ much, but during level ups you can use points to get several class-specific skills, or you can learn special abilities or kessens, whatever that means, in the Adventurer's Guild that can get you more attack power or beneficial effects that the before mentioned summons also belong to. Normally using these costs energy that can be replenished by attacking or taking damage, but once in a while it's randomly allowed to use one without cost, which can be crucial in turning the tide of a tough fight. Some skills overlap with certain character classes too much, but otherwise the tools offered for the battle system, while not bringing anything groundbreaking, gives a satisfying enough face-smashing fest, at least if the amount of mook slapping doesn't get too tiring.
Another thing I should scold the battle system on is how it's not always clear what all the status effect icons are, and I often had to randomly try different status healing items. Though that can be more attributed to my inability to memorize them, but to my defense, the game isn't very stellar at sharing information, and you have to digest most of it all at once from in-game manuals. Still, Infinite Adventures is a competent enough package.
Its limitations in budget is reflected as somewhat tame presentation and relying on randomization to support its core gameplay loop, which can cause the game feel unnecessarily long due to the labyrinth building algorithm's limited selection of tricks. However, its strong storytelling and world-building elements and versatile character customization get these adventures above average, and the decent battle system can help in uplifting its entertainment value, provided you digest the experience in smaller chunks to prevent getting bored by it. Overall, Infinite Adventures is a decent choice in case you don't want to bother with hunting down Etrian Odyssey games, or if you find the entries from its other source of inspiration, Wizardry, to be too archaic.
I think I managed to be fair to this game despite my own involvement, and whatever you may think of the outcome, for the record, I had fun time with recording my life, so thanks to Mr. Santier for giving me that opportunity. Now, I can't wait when my next video game voice role comes out. It has been quiet lately.